I'll be honest, the first word that comes to mind when I hear civic engagement is boring. It feels like a bit of a stodgy term. Mm-hmm. It feels like a term that wasn't made for me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get me excited.
That's so interesting. I think it's indicative of our generation. Because for me, it's such a powerful thing because, my grandparents and my husband's grandparents were on the front lines and, Jim Crow was part of their reality. There are people who can tell us those stories of those experiences. For me and my generation and those generations before me, it was like, no, roll up your sleeves and get to work.
See, that's inspiring to me. The roll up the sleeves and get to work. That's really inspiring, exciting to me. I don't know why civic engagement for me doesn't evoke that. Maybe that is the generational thing. Yeah.
I'm your host, Vicky Diaz-Camacho. This space brings together voices across generations to engage in honest conversations about democracy, identity, and the future we are building together. Let's dive in.
So I actually grew up not too far from here.
Okay.
We're in DC now, and I grew up in Bethesda, Maryland.
Yeah.
And I went to this really special school growing up, first grade through the end of high school. It was the first racially integrated school in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
It was founded in 1945 by a group of Jewish and Black parents who felt that it was wrong that their kids couldn't go to school together. So they created this new place of learning. And that shaped how I view the world. That shaped my understanding of our democracy. I would not have had the language to describe it this way in, middle school or high school, but they were preparing citizens for a multiracial, pluralistic society. Mm-hmm. And so that's what drives me in my work today. Mm-hmm. I am trying to do my part to make our democracy work.
Amazing. Thank you.
Well, my story, I was born in Trinidad. I came over to the United States at the age of 10. I went through the citizenship journey. So I was a resident alien. I became naturalized. And I went to high school here in the United States, and it was such a learning curve for me. Transitioning from the Caribbean, very European-focused educational system to the American educational system, and just the manner in which children treated each other, it really impacted me. So I was friends with everyone, and I was very social and very just warm and welcoming. And people, I noticed that there were schisms and that people would marginalize individuals who were from other places. And for me, it was just like, this wasn't right. And so I always advocated and stood up, even as a person who was marginalized myself, because people claimed they couldn't understand me, but I was speaking English, and so it was that kind of experience. So that really got me into the multicultural work, because I just thought it was just so important to understand people's lived experience and how critical that is for their development. And so, we have to do the right thing all the time when confronted, right, with things that are wrong or things that make people feel less than or less human. And so that's why I do the work that we do.
That's a powerful story right there. And I like that you kind of mentioned, how your lived experience informed what you do, and same with you, right? So this is a perfect segue, because I was going to ask is, how is your identity? How have personal experiences kind of motivated you, and what have been the lessons? If there's one, I'm sure there's many.
Well, I think for me, the quickest story would be I moved from the East Coast to South Dakota doing multicultural work. And as an African-American, or a person who identified as African Caribbean and of the diaspora, I was the first Black person that a lot of the students that I was working with had ever interacted with. It was an awakening for me to realize that growing up on the East Coast, I had sort of a lens of what the racial conversation was. And then when I went to South Dakota, I really discovered that the marginalized populations were the Native Americans. And I was really the first interaction that some of those individuals who'd been living on the homesteads for generations had ever met in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So the questions were coming from a place of true curiosity, and not from a place of really trying to marginalize or to insult me or as a microaggression.
I see.
It was just a lack of awareness based on what they had seen. And so that really helped me understand how to reframe the work so that I always come from a place of understanding where people are first, instead of coming in with an assumption that they're coming already polarized, right? And that's really how you get to learning. So that was a rude awakening for me, because I was the first Black person ever. And that burden of representing the entire race for people and reframing that idea that that's not fair for me to have to do that for you, but we can do this work together.
I love that. I'd gone to this high school that had about 100 people, 125 people in each graduating class to the University of Michigan, which is a gigantic school.
Yeah.
And I had learned in high school, you just say hi to people. Like you're friendly, you smile to people on the street.
Yeah.
And that was not the norm I learned at a big school.
Oh, no.
So if I'd met someone in class or at a party one time, I'd go up to them on the street and say, "Hey, I'm Gabe, good to see you." And that was weird at first, but I realized that was actually a superpower. I mean, that desire to connect with people in, for me, an authentic way. I just wanted to have friends and wanted to have a community in this new place in Ann Arbor. And nowadays, I realize how much of that was my ability to become that type of person was thanks to parents who really, really invested that time in teaching me how to do that, in friends who were patient with me in middle school, and teachers who helped me come out of my shell.
Oh, powerful. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Seriously. Because it can be often, a lot of emotional labor when we think back on those things, right? So one thing I'd love for you to also share is a person or an aha moment that made you really want to dive in and dive deep into this work. Can you think of one when the stars aligned? Or maybe it wasn't.
Honestly, I would have to say it was the birth of my daughter.
Wow.
That was the trigger for me of why the work was so important, because I was thinking about her future. And that I needed to be a light in dark places for her.
That's beautiful. Wow.
This is a bit of a zoom out one on why our democracy and a democracy that works is really important. But I found myself after college in Beijing, of all places. I was in this program with about 100 people in my cohort in this master's program, 48 different countries, 100 people. And one of my friends in this program was from a small country in Africa. And he and I would go on runs together, we'd grab food, and on one of these runs, we started talking about, well, what government system, what future does he want for his community and his country? And we got into this pretty raucous argument where I was making the case for democracy. And he basically said, comparing China's model, where people give up freedoms but get economic growth, get prosperity, to the messiness of what he saw at that time in the US, he said, I'd take China's model for my country any day. And that was striking. I mean, that was a glaring moment of, wow, our country is not working to such a degree that the symbol of American democracy that used to be the shining beacon is so tarnished that someone would rather give up freedoms in exchange for, building a functional society, getting out of poverty. And so that to me is like, all right, well, we got to fix that. We got to make sure that you can have both. You can have a society that works and a society that has freedoms and respects rights.
When I say civic engagement, what comes to mind? Could be 3 words or feelings, and why?
I'll be honest, the first word that comes to mind when I hear civic engagement is boring. It feels like a bit of a stodgy term. It feels like a term that wasn't made for me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get me excited.
Yeah. It's like a buzzword, right?
Yeah.
But what other things would you say come up for you?
I mean, to me, it also means justice. You don't get to keep a democracy without fighting for it.
Yeah.
And you don't get to keep your rights without advocating for them. And so when I think about civic engagement, being involved in the process, that's justice work. That takes work.
That's so interesting. I think it's indicative of our generation. Because for me, it's such a powerful thing because, my grandparents and my husband's grandparents were on the front lines and, Jim Crow was part of their reality. There are people who can tell us those stories of those experiences. So civic engagement was something that was not an option. It was not optional. It's really one of the, if you ask me the words that I need to choose, it would say that because you have to be involved. You have to step up. You have to, because justice is so important. And when good people don't advocate for it, it fails and our democracy fails. And so for me, civic engagement is being involved on the local level, on the national level, getting the education, getting the access, and being able to do the work. So it was always about rolling up the sleeves and getting in there. So for me and my generation, and those generations before me, it was like, no, roll up your sleeves and get to work.
See, that's inspiring to me. The roll up the sleeves and get to, that's really inspiring and exciting to me. I don't know why civic engagement for me doesn't evoke that. Maybe that is the generational thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, how do we get that to mean the same thing? Because I think that's where the breakdown, the dialogue between generations happens, right? Because those of us who, for us, we hear that and we get the goosebumps and we remember the marches and we remember the word. When we say that to you guys, you're like, I don't know, right? So for us, it's like, that's really saying something about that legacy of work and struggle. And so it's hard for me to then try to hear what you're really saying. And so I think I so appreciate what you shared with me, right? Because hearing it is boring. Really resonates now. There were some things that we heard that were boring too, but it was just like, it's putting it in that context. So how do we speak common language so that we both feel that we both get the goosebumps to understand that we need to be unified and on the front lines and rolling our sleeves up and getting the work done.